Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 7th February 2017. The first article, What America First Means for India. In this article, we'll be looking at what are the statements of President Trump and how they are going to impact India-US relations. So, you know that President Trump during his electioneering has clearly stated his agenda as keeping the America first. So, a kind of a protectionist attitude with regard to international trade has come into existence. During Obama's presidency, from his pivot to Asia policy, a kind of a rebalancing of power has started in Asia. One way it can be seen as containment of China by the United States of America. So, in this context, there is a liberal support for India from Obama. And before that, George Bush also has provided liberal support for rise of India. So a section of American establishment started arguing that there is an asymmetrical reciprocity for United States with India. US is giving more to India rather than what it is getting. That's what they started arguing for. Now, as the Trump sees diplomacy as more like a business, as more like a transaction, he expects a symmetrical reciprocity. So in this symmetrical reciprocity, he may expect for India to sign other foundational agreement related to defense. And already we know that during Ashton Carter, when he was the defense secretary, we signed for logistical exchange memorandum of agreement, that is LIMOVA, and SISMOVA, BICA, these are still pending. And added to that, the COMCASA, that is Communication Compatibility and Security Agreement, it is also pending between the countries. Now, in the previous videos, I have dealt what is LIMOVA, SISMOVA, Bilateral Exchange Cooperation Agreement, BICA, and then the COMCASA mean. And the second is, US is expecting India to actively participate in Afghanistan. So in one way, US is expecting to deploy its forces in Afghanistan. So India may not be ready for the same. When Vajpayee government was about to react favorably for deploying in Iraq, there is a huge resentment in India and the idea was dropped. And other irritant for India is, India wants Pakistan's role to be decreased in affairs of Afghanistan, and Pakistan shall be seen as a sponsor of the terror. It means United States has to decrease the role played by the Pakistan with regard to the affairs of Afghanistan. So, moving away from Pak-centric policy of Afghanistan may not be possible at the existing juncture of the things. And on the economic side, the growing protectionism can hurt the trade between the countries. As restrictions are being imposed on the H-1B visas, it's going to worst affect the Indian software industry. And added to that, Mr. Trump has clearly promised that it is not the symptom the disease is going to attack for. So H-1B visas are just the symptoms, but relocating the jobs, outsourcing the jobs to the other countries, that is what is the disease. He is going to fight very much the disease. If it is the case, it will affect the outsourcing and software industry in India. And coming to defense, India is already been declared as major defense partner. It means whatever the request made by India for the defense help, for import of the weapons, they will be seen from the presumption of acceptance rather than denial. It means they have to give the reasons for denial rather than for acceptance now. It means it will be seen from the eyes of why it has to be accepted rather than being denied. And the second is, with regard to India's restrictions on NGOs, especially Christian missionaries, such as Compassion International can become an issue for Prime Minister Modi with United States of America. So in this context, we have few positives and few negatives with regard to the Trump's policies. Finally, the Trans-Pacific Partnership was nullified by Mr. Trump. And TPP can do much of harm to India because the Southeast Asian countries can become the partners to it. And it is unfavorable to India and its trade with the developed world. So on the negative side, the scrapping of the TPP can provide for the primacy or rise of China with regard to international trade relations. So this is another thing with regard to America, the Trump's policies in the United States of America. And coming to perilous U-turn on Iran. So the President Obama's policy on Iran is based on pragmatism. You know that Iran is a regional power and Iran reflects the Shia community, and then the Saudi Arabia, another axis of power in the region, it is represents the Sunni community, and all the Arab rulers, they are in with support to Saudi Arabia, and the Shia community, Shia dominant countries, they are in support to Iran. So in this context, Iran nuclear deal was signed, and this Iran nuclear deal has provided for economic resurgence of Iran, and it is been opposed by Israel and also Saudi Arabia. So now Trump wants to reverse the gains made by the Iran due to the nuclear deal. And the Obama's major victory over here is to defer the Iran nuclear program at least by an year. So recently Iran has tested a missile. Taking this as a context, the sanctions were brought back onto Iran. These are both primary and secondary sanctions. The primary sanctions means US companies cannot trade with Iran. The secondary sanctions mean any company other than US coming outside the US cannot trade with US if it is trading with companies which are blacklisted. So, and second is, how is it going to affect the region and the world? In the fight against the Islamic State, Iran is on the forefront. So in this context, Iran has been declared as greatest state sponsor of terrorism, may not go well with the religious leadership over there. And the moderate factions which have got strength after Iran nuclear deal may get silenced, and the revolutionaries and extremists may gain the significance. And finally, the going sectarian war and growing proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia is expected to go worse. So it is the time that Trump has to take a pragmatic view on the Iran for the future of West Asia and also for the future of world. Now coming to rewiring the WTO. If you see World Trade Organization negotiations, at the Nairobi ministerial meeting, there is a significant change has occurred. So the Doha development agenda is kept aside for discussion and the new issues are being raised. These new issues are related to e-commerce, investments, trade facilitation. Finally, trade facilitation agreement went through and it is going to decrease the transaction costs related to the trade across the countries. It means the infrastructure facilities and added to that revamping of the customs departments is necessary among the developing and underdeveloped countries. And coming to the e-commerce, it has been projected as necessary for the development of MSMEs and providing them a market access. But if you take the internet penetration in the developing countries, the MSMEs are not expected to gain much from the e-commerce. It is to spread the international e-commerce giants into the markets of the developing countries. So, the new issues have gained the significance over the world issues of food security, PDS system, food subsidies, etc. So, this is what the article talks about. Back to basics. Now, if you see, the science is the basis for technology, and technology is the basis for innovation. Today, the countries which spend more on the basic sciences are expected to gain in the long run. The electromagnetism is responsible for telecom revolution across the world which we are seeing. And similarly, the codification, especially the mathematical innovations by Ramanujan and other mathematicians, has led to today's encryption in the internet era. So from this, what we can say is the countries that are investing in science, they are going to reap the benefits in the future, and India also has to gear up to invest in the basic sciences. So in this context, you know that the gravitational waves after they were discovered, India wanted to bring in a similar establishment to detect the gravitational waves in India. And a neutrino experiment is also being undertaken. The site was allocated in Tamil Nadu, but the progress is not much. So, what we can say is, in India, the emphasis on basic sciences is getting or is going southward, and because of this, India will more be a consumer economy rather than a producer economy. Now, let us see, that is world. Now, the US courts have imposed restrictions on the travel ban. It means they have lifted the travel ban imposed by the President Trump. So here we need to understand it from the political perspective, that is the checks and balances. The US Constitution was made on the checks and balances so that no one organ of the government will lead to or can become autocratic. In this case, the judiciary is acting as a check against the executive orders. So, any executive excesses can be checked by judiciary, and then any executive appointments, these need to be approved by the Senate. So, these are the checks and balances created in the United States Constitution. Let's come into the business page. So, ministries, sectoral regulators to screen FDI proposals. You know that Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion is the nodal agency for the FDIs to move into the country. And these FDIs comes through routes. One is automatic route, the next is approval route. Approval route, it means the Investments Promotion Board has to give the permission for the same. So in this case, more and more FDIs are now being allowed under the automatic route rather than approval route. So that's why the budget has proposed for the scrapping of the FIPB. Now, the few sectors where approvals are necessary, the money will come through ministries and also the sectoral regulators. So that is what has been stated by Sitharaman. Let's come back to the notes. So what America first means for India? That is, there shall be the President Trump may expect symmetrical reciprocity, Indian army in Afghanistan, Indian troops in Afghanistan, and also a kind of reciprocity in signing various basic agreements for being a major defense partner. This can be expected from India. And already we have discussed what is the perilous U-turn on Iran. And this notes is available to you at laex.in/civils-prep. And the second thing is, so the diary of events is already posted and we are working now on the economic survey. The diary of events is posted on the same website, that is laex.in/civils-prep. Thank you very much and all the best.